guys, Christy here, and last week I announced that I was going to be doing a special Q&A and a giveaway in celebration of my brand new book releasing, Ariadne and the Legend of the Fire Rose, and I'm really excited because I got so many great questions and I can't wait to answer them. So we'll start with the questions, and then at the end of the video I will announce who won the giveaway. So as far as the questions go, I tried to group them together as far as categories go. I wrote them down. My notes are like really messy. So I'm just gonna kind of go for it. So some of them might be a little bit out of order. I don't really know how this is gonna turn out. Maybe I can just, when I edit, I can just group them together a little bit better. So we'll see, but here goes. So the first one is from Kristen Lehman, and she asks, what was your favorite fairy tale growing up? And growing up, my favorite fairy tale was 100% hands down Beauty and the Beast. I was absolutely in love with the Disney movie. I think it came out when I was like in the 2nd or 3rd grade, which is just like the perfect age, to be into fairy tales. And it was just the best movie. I watched it 100 times, had it practically memorized. And it was funny at the end because I just remember, especially the first time I saw it, when the Beast got transformed back into a human, I remember being like, can we bring the Beast back? Because like, as a little girl, I didn't think that the prince with like the long hair and the pointy nose was like attractive. And I was kind of like confused, but obviously it didn't stop my love of the movie. Did anybody else feel that like you really wanted the Beast to come back? Like, because like he's the one we fell in love with, and like now who's this other guy? But anyway, I love that movie. It was so great. It has such good memories for me. And Kristen also asked, is that fairy tale, Beauty and the Beast, still your favorite now that you've read a lot of fairy tale retellings? And actually, no. I have to say that my favorite fairy tale right now to read is Cinderella. And I don't know, there's just something about that trope in books that I really like. I love that kind of down and out girl, underprivileged girl, maybe she's being a little bit abused, being like noticed by the guy that everyone wants, whether he's like a prince or like a star athlete or like whatever he is, he's like the guy and he notices her. And I just love that trope for whatever reason. And I feel like it's easier to write about. Like, I don't know why, like a lot of the Cinderella retellings are just very well executed. Whereas the Beauty and the Beast retellings that I've read, I've definitely found some that I have really enjoyed. In fact, one of my favorite retellings of all time is a Beauty and the Beast retelling. It's by Melanie Cellier. I just really like the way she portrayed that retelling. But it seems like there have been more Beauty and the Beast retellings that I've kind of been like, eh. Whereas like Cinderella, I feel like it's kind of hard to mess up. I don't know. That's just been my experience. I just feel like there's been more Cinderella retellings that I've really enjoyed versus Beauty and the Beast. And I find myself gravitating to Cinderella retellings. And in fact, I will try a new author with a Cinderella retelling versus a Beauty and the Beast retelling now, just because of the kind of the luck I've had with both of those retellings. So hope that answers your question, Kristen. Next question is a really fun one from Reese from the Writing Songbird. And she asks, what is your dream vacation? And that is easy. I know exactly where I would want to go. I would love to go to New Zealand to see all the places where The Lord of the Rings is filmed and just experience the beauty of the country. That just excites my heart like nothing else. And I mean, that would be the trip of a lifetime. Like if you were like, you want to go on a trip anywhere in the world right now, here's like $10,000, I'd be like, New Zealand, let's go. So yeah, that is absolutely my dream vacation. I just think it's one of the most beautiful countries in the world, and it has such significance in my life as a movie perspective and a literary perspective. So yeah. Reese also asks, do you have any pets? Yes, I do. I have 2 little cats. I do have a little clip of them because I like to take videos of them sometimes, so I will show you guys a little clip of these two little cats.
You're funny. You're a funny girl. You like the book? Yeah? Yeah. You want some love too? Come here. Aww.
What are your favorite movies and TV shows? So at the moment, I do not actually watch a lot of movies or TV shows. We don't actually have TV. If I want to watch something, I just stream it over my phone or like my laptop. We can hook it up to the TV if we want to, but it's kind of like a pain. So usually if I want to watch something, it's like on my phone. So I guess we're definitely like the cord cutters. But the favorite movies I like to watch are Lord of the Rings, Harry Potter movies, Hunger Games, all the big ones, and Narnia. Speaking of Hunger Games, I really love The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. We went and saw that in the theater. I actually really, really love movies. But right now I'm just focusing a lot on writing and reading, so I don't have a lot of time to actually like sit down and watch movies. So my plan is that when little baby comes, I am going to give myself permission to just sit on the couch and watch movies and veg and just soak up all the entertainment, because I don't know that I'll really be able to do a whole lot of anything else because I'll be so tired. So that's kind of like the time I'm setting aside to just watch movies and like consume all that kind of entertainment. What other hobbies do you have besides reading and writing? I really like gardening and flowers. I love all things flowers. I'm a little bit obsessed. If you guys end up reading my new book, you will see exactly what level of obsession I have with flowers. It's kind of a lot. So I also like the trees down here, like I said, like hiking, spending time in nature, just like anything outside. Like I'm really an outdoor girl. And I also really like designing things. Like I like doing a little bit of graphic design. I actually have a little store on Zazzle. Like I like to make little bags and pillows and stuff like that, and I sell them, and I don't really make a lot of money. It's definitely still a hobby. It's like not enough for them to actually take any like taxes out. And but I like to do it for fun, and like a lot of times for Christmas, I like to design something like personal, like a personalized gift for my family. So the last few Christmases I've done that. So that's just something, I find it very therapeutic to just kind of sit on the computer and be like, la, 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 like designing stuff. So the next question's a fun one. It comes from Taylor from Tales and Treats with Tay and Jamie from Reed Brucey, and they both asked, how did you meet your hubby? What's your romance? So at the time I was living in the Washington, D.C. area. I actually grew up there, and I had some friends that lived down in North Carolina. So I was in my late 20s, 28, 29, and I was just having a blast, living life, and was just able to come down and visit for about once a month. I would actually come down to North Carolina and just like spend the weekend, hang out, chill, get away. It was just a great time. So he was part of that group of friends. I had known about him for quite a while, but I had never really talked with him. And then like one day, all of a sudden, he just decided he was going to start like having little conversations with me. But these conversations were not like long. Like he's really shy, like quiet. So here's the thing. I thought he was really, really good looking, but he's like definitely like the strong, silent type. And when he would try to talk to me, it was like he would come up to me and he would ask me like a couple of questions, like 2 or 3 questions at a time. Like, and then it would be like he'd just like freeze up and then like go away, and somebody else would come and start talking to me. So I just thought, okay, he's just a really nice guy. Yeah, okay, whatever. I had dated a lot of guys, like been on dates. Okay, well, let's clarify that. I had been on dates with a lot of guys, especially in the last like 2 or 3 years, because I was getting older in my late 20s, and I was like, I really need to start like seeing what's out there, and so I had been on a lot of dates with guys, but I had never actually really had a steady boyfriend like my whole life. So I was used to just guys kind of like coming up to me and like talking to me, but then like it not really going anywhere. So that's kind of how I saw this. But here's what was really happening behind the scenes that I had no idea about. It's really funny. It turns out he had a list of all these things he wanted in a girl. And every time he would come up to me, he would ask me a couple of questions off this list. And some of the times he would talk to me, I'd be like, well, that was weird. He'd ask me something really, really random. And then other times it would just be like normal things like, what do you think about this? Or what do you think about this? And this went on for about 6 months or so. Like, he was flying under the radar for like 6 months, like asking me questions. Every time I would see him, just a couple questions. That was it. Right over my head. Well, the time came when he felt that he had enough evidence that I was the one for him. And he made his move. And boy, did he make his move. He came up to me. He was like confident. And I was like, oh, hello. Like, I actually really liked it. Like, he kind of like, I was talking to this other guy at the time, and I remember he like stepped in front of the other guy and was like, hi, can I have a word? Like, just like started talking to me. And I was kind of like, okay, I feel like I'm really being pursued here. Like, what is this, So I remember that weekend, we talked like the whole weekend, and I was like really into him. But at the same time, with my history, I was kind of like, all right, we're just talking, and there's no reason to take this seriously. Let's just go slow, like whatever, In fact, he asked for my number. I was so just like joking around about it that recently I had taken a Disney princess test, and I must have been in a weird mood that day, but I got Pocahontas of all the princesses. And so I remember I was telling him about it, and I was just kind of joking around. So when he asked for my number, I literally entered my name in it as Pocahontas. Like, I didn't even put my real name. And so by the time like the end of the weekend rolls around, he kind of like pulls me aside and starts like really talking to me, like the whole define the relationship talk. And he starts talking about marriage and like all this serious stuff, and like really wanted to get to know me. And I'm like, whoa, we just started talking. Let's back up. Wow. Okay. Cause like, I mean, you have to understand, this guy went from like a couple of questions here and there to like, bam, we're talking marriage. And it freaked me out. So he had my number, and I went home, and he texted me, and I just like ghosted him. Like, I did not text back. Like, it was bad. And several weeks went by, and I just remember I kept thinking about him, and I ended up having a conversation with one of my friends back in the DC area, and I finally kind of told her about this guy and what happened, and she was just like, he was just trying to tell you that his intentions were honorable. And I was like, really? Okay. And so then I was like, okay, well, let me think about it. I'm going to go down and visit again pretty soon. So like, okay, we'll see what happens. And then I remember one of my friends down in North Carolina said to me, look, I know him, and he's a really nice guy, and I really think you should give him another chance. So those two conversations really kind of like turned my thoughts towards him. And I remember that before I actually went down again, I think it was maybe longer than a month this time. I don't know the timing of it, because I just remember like several weeks went by, and And one night I was just like, okay, Lord, like, I don't know what this is, but I remember praying and being like, what do I do? Because like, this guy, all these people are like, maybe you should, check this out. And I did really enjoy spending time with him and like talking with him. We were like tracking on a lot of our beliefs and things like that. And I just remember that prayer, like this like incredible like peace came over me. And I had just the strongest desire ever to just text him back. And I don't even remember what I said. I think it was just like, hi or something. Like it was like, hey, how are you? I don't know. I don't even know what I said. It was just like this really simple text. And he texted back like pretty much right away. And it was just like something changed in that moment because we talked nonstop for like until I went to visit again, which I think was like 2 weeks later, something like that. So we were just like texting. I think he called me a couple times. And it was just, everything was different. Everything just clicked. Like, that's the only way I can describe it. It was just like a veil had been lifted off my eyes. And so I went to visit him, or I went down to visit North Carolina again. And I remember the date so profoundly. It was August 2nd. He officially asked me to be his girlfriend. And he was so sweet about it. Like he was just, he was just so sweet about it. I don't even think we like held hands or anything like that. Like it was just like this really pure, sweet, like he just really wanted to get to know me, and I love that. And so I went back home, and now I have this long distance boyfriend. And that ended up being really, really difficult, a lot more difficult than I thought it was going to be. So, like I said, it was August 2nd when we started dating, and we were doing like Zoom and phone calls and texting and all that stuff. And October rolls around, and I was working as a nanny at the time, and I got the news that the family could no longer afford to pay me, and we're going to have to put their child in like this really cheap daycare. So I was out of a job all of a sudden, and I thought, okay, well, maybe this is my chance. I need to make a change and see if this guy is the real deal. So I decided that I was going to move to North Carolina. So the great thing is that I found a new nanny job. These two little twin girls, within like 2 to 3 weeks, they had just lost their nanny and they were like desperate, and I just lost my job, so it was a perfect fit. And I started with them right away. I found a place to live right away. No, we did not live together before we were married. And so this is like the middle of October. He took me ring shopping like a couple of weeks. I want to say it was a week or two after I moved down. I think he was just kind of like waiting for a sign. And at that point, we were already saying, I love you, which is so funny because like if our story was a romance novel, people would hate it. People would be like, yeah, this is insta love. Like y'all were saying I love you after like a month or two, and like you're already looking at rings. Like, what is this? Which I think is so funny because like how we, like most of us do not like the insta love trope. Yet I know more stories in real life that kind of happen like that than like say like the fake dating trope. Like I don't actually know anybody that fake dated and then like really got together. But I do know a lot of people that had the whole insta love thing. So, well, he ended up proposing New Year's Eve. So we started dating in August. He proposes just a couple months later, New Year's Eve. It was on a Ferris wheel at the National Harbor. It was so romantic. I was not expecting it. I started screaming because I was just so surprised and shocked and so, so happy. And we ended up getting married May 2nd. So from August 2nd to May 2nd, dating to married. 9 months, literally, like 9 months to the day. And we have now been married. It will be 9 years in May, and now we're expecting a little baby. So that tells you how old I am. I don't actually feel that old. I feel like I'm in my late 20s, and I feel like I still really relate to people that are in their mid 20s to late 20s. But my age is another number. So so yeah, I hope that gives you hope if you're out there and you're like, I haven't really dated a whole lot, I've just kind of been going along with life, whatever. Maybe you're like 29, 30, and you're just like, when's he gonna come? Let me tell you, sister, it can happen so fast. When God says it is the right time and he moves that person in your life, it can happen so fast. It just showed me that like God knew where I was at the whole time. There was nothing wrong with me. Like I went through so many years thinking like there was something wrong with me. Like why am I not clicking with these other guys, and like why are things just not working out? Like maybe I'm just meant to be single for the rest of my life, but I had this like huge desire in my heart like to be married. And I realized that he hadn't forgotten about me. There was nothing wrong with me. It just literally was not the right timing. I hadn't met my husband yet because we didn't even live in the same state. So like, there's another person in play. Like maybe the other person needs to like move to the area that you live in, like you don't know why you haven't met the person that you are supposed to be with. You just don't know the reason. But I just hope that encourages you that like if you're kind of just like, where is my guy? That like the Lord knows exactly where the both of you are at, and at the perfect time he's going to bring you guys together, and if it's from him, it's going to be amazing. Okay, so that kind of slides me into this next question from Tales and Treats with Tay. What do you love about where you live? So I grew up in the Washington, D.C. area, and now I live in North Carolina. And when I first moved down, I didn't like it. I was very homesick. I was just very used to life up in the DC area and the way it was, and my friends and family and everything up there. And when I first moved down to North Carolina, I was kind of like, ooh. But now I absolutely love it, and I do not want to go back. I love the trees. There's trees everywhere. There's forests. There's hiking trails. It's an absolutely beautiful state. I like the weather, except for sometimes I get a little sad when it's wintertime and it really doesn't snow down here. Like that's the only thing that makes me a little bit sad. But other than that, the weather is fantastic. I like the people down here. I like the culture. And one thing that I really noticed the difference between the DC area and where I live in North Carolina is that in the DC area, I literally lived like 10 miles away from the White House. So everyone I knew was either like a government worker or like had some connection with the military or just some kind of connection. Like most of my friends worked in DC, like had like a political type job or something like that. Or they just were really, really corporate. It's just a really like corporate-y area. So that created a lot of tension in the people like all the time, because like, you probably hear about like stuff happening in the government, in the world, in the country, and you're like, wow, that's a lot. There's a lot of stuff going on. Like, that's really intense. Well, you're like in the middle of it. It is like constantly buzzing around you. It's not just something you see on the TV, like you can just put away. It is around you all the time. And I did not realize this until I moved away. I was like, you mean like people can just like live their lives and just like, be with their families and just like chill and not have to worry about all this like political drama and stuff all the time? Like I had no idea. And so yeah, I mean, living in the DC area is actually like really, really stressful. There's a lot of traffic. There's a lot of drama. Like all the issues that the country faces are like right there, So, and I grew up with it, so I didn't know any better. Like I just thought it was like that for everybody. So yeah, that is one thing I definitely love about where I live. I love the peace that is in this area that is just unlike where I came from. It's just so beautiful down here. And Taylor asked, what is your salvation story? So I was actually a little girl. I remember going to Sunday school. I was about 5 years old. And I remember the teacher talking about, accepting Jesus into your heart. But I didn't really know what it meant, and it wasn't until I went home. I don't know if it was that day or a couple of days later, but my mom bought us these little tapes that had like Bible stories on them. And there was some singing and there was some storytelling. I mean, that just shows how old I am because it wasn't even CDs, it was tapes. And I was sitting on the couch down in my basement and I was just having a good time and I was listening to this tape. And I remember they were singing, it was a story about Jesus. And I don't even remember exactly how the story went, but I just remember something coming over me and being like, I need to ask Jesus into my heart, and like really connecting with the story. And so I sat on the couch and I was all by myself and I prayed and I asked Jesus into my heart. And I remember I started crying like right after. I was like 5 and I just immediately started crying. It was like, even though I was so little, I knew that something was different. I'm like crying now. And I remember running upstairs to my mom and my mom was like, what's wrong? And I was like, Mom, I asked Jesus into my heart. And she gave me a hug and she was so happy. And that was, just the start of my Christian life. And my parents are actually teachers at a Christian school. So I grew up in this Christian school and it was a really fantastic school. And like, there were many times like growing up, I was kind of like, oh, I just wish I could like go to a public school, or I just wish that I could go somewhere else. Like it was a small school. You knew everybody. I was there kindergarten through 12th grade. I didn't realize until I got older what a great environment it really, really was, because the teachers at that school really taught us how to think, which is so important in today's world. Like they would teach us about like apologetics and here's how you fight against secular humanism and relativity and just like all these different viewpoints of the world and different religions. They really taught us how to think, and they also equipped us with, this is why Jesus is real. Like they would give us like the history behind Bible stories, things like that. So I grew up with this like huge amount of evidence that like Jesus was very real. He was a historical figure, but he's very present in my life today. That was another thing. They also taught us and really encouraged us to have a very personal relationship with Jesus. Like they encouraged us to have like personal devotion time. Ever since I was like in middle school, like that was something that was constantly being told to us. Like you need to have a personal relationship with Jesus Christ. Like he's not just, something you go to church every week. Like you need to invite him into your life like every day. And so it wasn't until I got out into the adult world that I really started to appreciate the environment that I grew up in. And I think it goes to show you that if you can teach children how to think, that you can equip them to be like this incredible force for Jesus out in the world. And they don't have to go through life like making all kinds of mistakes. Now, I had choices to make. I was certainly presented with choices all the time, and by the grace of God, thankfully, the environment I grew up, I had the logic to make the right decisions. And when I grew up and I realized and I would see people getting into alcoholism or like whatever, and I think there was definitely a period of time where I was probably a little bit judgmental, but once I got older and I realized, I was like, the only thing that makes me different is literally the environment I grew up in. Like if I had been raised, without a dad, or like, let's say my parents split when I was young and I just was like shuffled from school to school, or like whatever. If I had been raised in a different environment, then I would have done the same things. I realized that I had this layer of protection around me, that is the only reason that I grew up without having to make a lot of terrible mistakes. Also, like when I got older, I think there were times where I was jealous of people that had like this amazing salvation story, because, like, for example, my husband came to know Christ like 5 years before we got married. Like he's lucky to be alive. Like he tells me his story and the environment he grew up in, and he is alive today because Jesus wanted him to be. And I mean, his story is just amazing, and it just shows you the power of Christ. And it wasn't until I got out into the adult world that I really experienced the darkness that is out there. I was like in my mid-20s, and I'm not going to go into detail, but it was just a really terrible situation where I was experiencing a lot of spiritual warfare, a lot of just really freaky things that were happening. But through that experience, I learned one very valuable thing, that prayer is like the most important thing ever, because that direct connection that you have with the Lord is like everything. Because yes, the enemy is scary and terrible and can be very powerful in his own way, but he is nothing compared to God. He's like a little flea like that can so easily be blown away or stepped on. He is nothing compared to God. But if you do not have that direct connection to the Father, to God through prayer, what are you going to do? like you will not make it. Like you will not be able to stand up against the enemy. And so I think that through the seasons of life, and now, like where I'm at now, like prayer is so important. It is so simple to do, yet so simple not to do. And if I can encourage anyone to just how to grow in your walk, in your faith, and obviously like reading the Bible, studying scripture, building your faith that way, but prayer, like study about the power of prayer, because it is literally everything. It's everything to me. I cannot go a day without praying. It's so interesting, like sometimes the enemy tries to like put things on us that he's going to try to destroy us, and in the end you end up coming out stronger, because today I am so much stronger because I really, really understand the power of prayer. So that's my story, kind of my salvation story and like my Christian walk and where I'm at now. I hope that encourages somebody. So now for the questions about writing. Kaylee Reyes asked, when did you first realize you wanted to be an author? So I first realized I wanted to be an author when I was a little kid. I remember I was 5 years old, and I had an assignment in kindergarten to like write a little story or something like that. And I remember the teacher like talking to my mom about it and be like, she's really good at writing stories, And as I got older, kind of developed that skill a little bit, because I mean, these are just very basic sentences. So I guess, I don't know, maybe it was pretty good for being 5. But my school ended up having writing contests that the kids could enter. And I remember when I was 9 years old and when I was 10 years old, I entered these contests and I won both years in a row. So I want to say it was probably around like really 9 or 10 that I was like, I want to be an author, because like clearly I have some ability. I've won these contests and I really, really enjoy it. So that's what I want to do. Why did it take me so long to actually write a book? Well, that is a very long story that I will have to save for another video. I'm so sorry, it's getting really long. So yeah, I'm gonna have to save that story for later. Psalm 19 Creations asked, what was the inspiration behind your book? Like, where did you get the inspiration for your book? So I feel like there's a lot of different directions I could go with this because there was a lot of things that inspired me along the way. And one of them is just that my whole life I thought about being an author. Like I said, when I was a little kid, that's what I wanted to do. And as I got older, I was like, I want to create a world. Like, I want to create a new world that people can step into and really escape and just really, really makes them happy to be a part of, you know, because I saw movies like Harry Potter, Lord of the Rings, things like that. Like, I was like, I want to create a world. And so I started thinking about, well, what kind of world am I going to create? And I just kind of thought about this over the years. It wasn't until 2017 that I really started to think, what do I want to do with my life? You know, like if there's like one thing I want to do before I die, like what is it? And that was write a book. And so by this time I'm in my 30s and I was working for this flower shop, and my part of my job was to drive around in this truck and like deliver the flowers. And living in North Carolina, there's a lot of beautiful roads with like trees and forests, and there's just like a lot of beautiful scenery around here. And this really started to spark the beginnings of this world. And at the same time, you know, I'm driving around and I start thinking about things, this world that I wanted to create. I was also reading this book, is a nonfiction book by Lisa Bevere, and it was called Lioness Arising. And in the book, it kind of talks about like girls actually working together, like not fighting against each other, but like working together like for the good. And I got this picture in my head of this very, very literal, like allegorical image of like girls like out in the wilderness. They have weapons, they're fighting, but they're working together to defeat like evil or defeat something. And I got this very, very literal image. And out of that literal image and like the forest and the trees spun this whole world, Ariadne and the Legend of the Fire Rose. You know, another thing that inspired me is I wanted to make, in this world, I wanted it to mean something. Like I wanted there to be symbolism. I wanted it to be like Narnia or Lord of the Rings. I wanted people to, if they didn't have faith, they didn't believe in God or anything like that, that they could read this story and still really, really enjoy it. But if you did believe in God and have an understanding of the Bible, you could just see the symbolism, like just it would just come alive for you. So I really wanted to put allegory into this world. And you know, time went on. Obviously it's now 2024, so it took me a while to put it all together, but eventually it got there. And it just started with like a little question: what do I really, really want to do? Reese from the Writing Songbird asks, what is the book or author that has shaped your writing the most? And outside of wanting to create a world, like the big ones, you know, like Lord of the Rings, Narnia, Hunger Games, Harry Potter, you know, I think they gave me a lot of inspiration. But surprisingly, the author that I wanted to sort of emulate the most in writing style was actually J.K. Rowling, the author of Harry Potter, because she was able to create a story that was simple enough for a child to understand and love, yet complex enough for adults to still be entertained by. I mean, the woman was a complete genius. And talk about a masterclass in creating a world. I mean, she took this idea, this whole wizarding world, and made it so real, so believable that it is now at a theme park. It's at Universal Studios. I mean, and I went there about 2 years ago. I mean, I was blown away that somebody could create something like this. And so when I went to write my story, I was like, I want this story, I want my writing style to be simple enough that younger people can understand it and read it and love it, yet you know, if you're in your 30s or 40s, you can enjoy it as well. Psalm 19 Creations asked, since you've read so many fairy tale retellings, do you think you would ever write one yourself? Yes, I actually do have plans for at least one fairy tale retelling right now, because the Ariadne series is going to be 4 books, and so that's going to take me a little while to get that out. But there is a character that shows up in the 4th book that I already have a story for, and I love it. It's going to be a Cinderella story, and there's already elements to it that I just absolutely adore, and I cannot wait to write it. I already have most of the plot figured out. It's gonna take me a while before I can actually write it. And Oshina asks, is fantasy the only genre you plan to write in? So as of now, yes, because I think it's gonna take me a while. I have so many ideas to spin out of this world that I just really enjoyed creating. However, my first attempt at writing a book was actually a contemporary book, and also then my next attempt at writing a book was actually a historical romance, and it was like in the Regency area. But at the time, it was actually, I was about 16 and the internet barely existed. So it was really, really hard to do research. So I kind of just like, it fizzled out. I kind of gave up on it. It was just like too hard for me at the time. So in the future, I would not mind at all attempting again to definitely write some historical romances. Or as far as contemporary goes, I don't know. It's kind of the thing that like the idea just has to hit me, like has to really spark me. So if I can come up with a really great idea, like I will definitely write it down. I do that all the time. Like sometimes I'm out and about and I'm like, oh, that would be a really, really good idea for a story, you know, or like, you know, just like some aspect of a movie or something like that. And be like, ooh, I can make a whole story off of this one little thing, you know? So if something hits me, I will write it down and then I'll save it for the future. So we'll see what happens. I don't know. And then the next question, how did I go about getting published? And for some reason, I did not write down who asked me this. I think it was maybe Alma? I don't know. I'll have to look it up. So how did I go about getting published? So I did send this book off to this company that kind of like distributes it to all the major publishing companies, the Christian publishing companies. And I didn't really hear anything back. And in fact, I ended up getting like one reply from like this company that was like a weird hybrid of like self-publishing and like traditional publishing, and they were like, you're gonna have to pay like $2,500, but we want to publish your book. I was like, no. So I started looking into the indie publishing world, and I found out that on average indie authors actually make a lot more than traditionally published authors. And I started just looking into it, like, what do I need to do to go about that? Like I would need to find a good editor, a good cover designer, all that kind of stuff. So that is what I did. Okay, I feel like I've been talking for like an hour, so thank you for listening. Thank you for making it this far through all those questions. So now we're gonna pick the winner for the signed copy of my new book. And so the way to get into this, you had to ask me a question. So and I asked Taylor from Tales and Trees with Tay how to do this. She did a giveaway recently, and it was like this really cool like electronic little spinny wheel, and she did like screen recording, and then I realized that I record with my phone, so I can't do that. So I decided to just put everybody's name in a bowl. So I'm gonna pick right now. So here we go. The winner is Alma Bin. Let me see. Okay, there we go. Alma Bin, thank you so much for asking your question, and I'll be contacting you shortly to get you the signed copy of my new book. So that is all I have for today. Thank you guys for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.